Just right, you had it right.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to the Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023 City Council meeting for the City of Hayden. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Could I please have a roll call of the council members, Abby?
Council President Roeder?
Here.
Councilmember DePriest?
Here.
Councilmember Satterfield?
Yes.
And Councilmember White?
Yes.
I'd like to ask Council President Roeder to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you all would stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Who's our musical entertainment?
Yes, if you folks could mute your phones, we'd appreciate it. Council members, do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda tonight? Okay, hearing none, I'll proceed. Ladies and gentlemen, the City of Hayden does business all the time. Some of the business that the City of Hayden staff does requires the permission or the consent of council. On your agenda, you will see that tonight on the consent calendar, we have 1A, the approval of the September 13th, 2022 City Council meeting minutes. 1B, the approval of Angels in the Park event permit application and loudspeaker request. 1C, approval of King Realty Fall Festival event permit application with permission to serve alcohol and a loudspeaker request. 1D, approval of updated joint powers agreement and a participation agreement with I3A. 1E, the approval of the professional services agreement with JUB Engineers for the H6 Force Main Design Services. 1F, approval of change order number 4 for the City Hall remodel and elevator project. 1G, the approval of Access Unlimited work order for the City Hall access control system. 1H, the approval of the David Evans and Associates Addendum 5 Honeysuckle Avenue Ramsey Road Roundabout project. 1I, approval of the acceptance of the infrastructure for the Daughtery Park commercial subdivision. 1J, the approval of the Daughtery Commerce Park final plat. 1K, acceptance of the Christopher D. Gibbs grant of easement and dedication of right-of-way. 1L, the approval of the Leonardi land acquisition documents for the Ramsey Road extension project. 1M, the approval of the Kootenai County Airport land acquisition documents for the Ramsey Road extension project. 1N, the approval of the cooperative funding agreement with Hayden Lake Irrigation District. 1O, the ratification of bills paid on 5/15/23 and 5/17/23. And 1P, the approval of bills for payment. Our city council was previously given the background information on this and had a chance to ask any questions that they may have had. However, council, are there any other questions or comments on the consent calendar?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember White.
Hi. Yes, thank you very much. I thought I had asked all my questions ahead of time, but this afternoon some other things popped up that I wanted to ask about. I especially wanted to focus on the professional services for the H6 12-inch force main design services. That's memo.
Would that be 1E?
1E. Yes.
Thank you.
So I guess my questions would be directed towards Alan.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I was just wondering, on the third page, it talks about the client. Who is the client?
City of Hayden.
The City of Hayden is the client? Okay. All right. And I was wondering, who is paying for this part of the design services, the $117,000?
As the client, City of Hayden.
The City of Hayden? Okay. Now, I remembered something from the budget last year saying that the sewer board, Harbs, was going to pay for something for the concept design force main. Was that something different than this?
There's, the contract has been split in half.
Okay.
They've already approved their half of the agreement.
Okay.
This is the other half.
Okay, thank you. All right, and let's see, what else did I have? Okay, and then does this agreement today obligate us to further action, or is this just one action? Just doing this
It obligates you to the terms of the agreement before you, which I believe is design.
design? Okay, but it doesn't obligate us to sending it out for,
I think it's a design contract.
okay. All right. Thank you very much. Oh, I have one more question. The developers are does this have an agreement with, do we have an agreement with developers in other, to help pay for the main, the force main?
We are in ongoing discussions with developers for over 2 years now.
Right.
And I believe that we have basically a framework that everybody's probably somewhat in agreement with, and we're trying to finalize that. But before there would be an agreement with the developers, that would come before council, so
Okay.
you would already know if we were there, but we're not.
Thank you. Thank you very much for answering these questions. I appreciate that.
Mayor, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
if I may.
Council President Roder.
Just a quick question on 1H, which.
H or A?
1H.
Okay.
This is for the design for the Honeysuckle Ramsey roundabout.
Yes.
Do we have an update on where we're at on, are we getting closer to being able to get the right-of-ways and so we can move forward on it, or can we get a short update on that?
This is kind of like part of the first steps. We've been working with negotiating an agreement to bring those plans up. I mean, they got tabled for a number of years. There's been, things have changed since that time. There's been agreements that were kind of made with other property owners. There's agreements that we're working on in order to obtain right-of-way, that changes we want to make that will make it more favorable. All those things have been working behind the scenes to get to this agreement so that we can get started on going down that path.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to just maybe add, since then too, the utility corridor area has changed slightly, and so the property lines have changed, and so they were at 95%, and this is meant to get us to final design, and then from that, we will get new right-of-way documents that we then can make new offers to the other remaining folks.
Yeah,
So
that's some of the
kinda-
changes that we're making on with this.
I appreciate all the efforts. I know this has been a long process, and it'd be a good one to get around about it. Thank you.
Are there any questions from council regarding the consent calendar? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion regarding the consent calendar.
I'll make that motion that we approve the consent calendar as stated, 1A through 1P.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please. Abby?
Councilmember Satterfield,
Yes.
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember DePreez.
Yes.
And Council President Roder.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item of business tonight is our visitor public comment section. If any of you would like to make a public comment here, please there's the forms at the back there. If you'd please bring that up to the front here so that we can get you in line. Each speaker during the public comment period will be limited to 5 minutes. At the end of 4 minutes, I'll wave a paper to let you know you've got 1 minute remaining. Please fill out a comment card, bring it up to the front there. When you speak, please state your name and whether or not you are a Hayden resident. The council may not hear or take testimony regarding any planning and zoning matter that is before the city or is known to be a likely application. And citizens are free to respectfully express their opinions, but they may not disparage another citizen, city staff member, or council member. First up tonight, we have Ms. Susan Lehman.
Hello, again. I wasn't planning on getting up to speak tonight until I saw 16 items on the consent calendar. I was like, yowza, including one that included $117,700 worth of expenditure. So I will say when Stephanie Satterfield, am I pronouncing that correctly? When she spoke a few weeks ago, she did make a good point. And I thought, okay, point well taken. Because she mentioned the budget. The budget has already been passed. And so I thought, okay, maybe this could be a guideline on how to decide whether something goes on the consent calendar or not. So I don't know which, again, because this gets to the other point, the agenda comes out, I don't know what this is about, until the time that we come to the meeting, and then I can't talk about it because it's on the agenda that night. But I don't know which of these items are something that's already were part of the budget when it was approved and which are not, which are new and weren't included in the budget. And maybe the budget has a surplus kind of slush fund kind of thing for, because a lot of times in contracting, things go over, more than what you think they'll be. So maybe there's a little bit of that, but maybe what could be a guideline is if something was already in the budget, this is part of what we already approved, it can go in the consent calendar, but if it isn't, it can't go in the consent calendar. And so I'm guessing, again, I haven't been coming to meetings for that long. I don't know when you approve the budget. There is no way that you should have this kind of structure when you're having meetings approving the budget. That's what, if anything, that's where you want to have the most public comment for weeks in advance. You can't pass a budget with this kind of structure where you have it on the agenda and nobody in the public can comment on it because you're voting on it that night. That's nuts. But I don't know what your process is for the budget. So, but if you pass the budget, people talked about it, and these things were in it, then yeah, they can be on the consent calendar. But if it's over and above, and you're spending money, then it needs to be able to have discussion about it. So that was the primary thing for me. I looked at 16 items, and a lot of them involving money. And then I did remember Stephanie's comment. I thought, well, maybe that could be a delineation, a way to think of that, and put some rules and regs on what goes into the consent calendar and what doesn't. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lehman, all of the items that we talk about tonight are budgeted items. Our budget is approved on essentially October 1st for the following year. And I would encourage you, if you have questions about the budget, to please see either our city clerk, Abby Sanchez, or our city administrator, Brett Boyer, and they will be happy to explain our budget process to you.
Is the budget online?
Is budget online?
It's part of the state thing, it is, yeah. You can go, yes, you can get our budget online, and we can show you how to do it.
Thank you for your comment. Second commenter, Miss Amy McCalmy.
Hi, Amy McCamley, and I am a Hayden resident. So I'm a little bit concerned because there's a city councilman who's been making comments on Facebook, and I don't know what the code of conduct is for city council people, but I do feel it's important to bring it to the attention of the public, because I feel like these people, right, you guys are representing us as a community, and there's some deep concern. There's a Facebook page that's called, it's like a GOP, it's basically a fake Republican Facebook page that a lot of people go on there to make fun of conservatives, Republicans, whatever you want to call it. And so this city council person is on there quite a bit. And, a lot of it is just high school. So a lot of times it's just, you kind of scroll past it saying this is high school nonsense. But there's
Ma'am, I'm going to stop you right there. We will not speak disparagingly of any member of council here this evening.
So this isn't disparagingly. This is actually comment that they wrote themselves.
Go ahead and proceed.
Okay, yeah, that's I'm just keeping it very general. But I did come across two things that were very concerning that this city council person actually posted themselves. So this isn't people talking about them. This is an actual post. One of them is one qualification that both Hanley and Plass, for those of you who don't know who that is, those are the two gentlemen that just recently won the library board positions. So again, we're getting ready to speak about kind of our right? I don't know what we call it, like not co-workers, but we're all kind of in this together. One qualification that Hanley and Plass seem to have is reading all kinds of what they call porn, sexual content, etc. I began to get the feeling that they were getting some kind of stimulation each time they read over and over, every time they read it over and over. Maybe they need a restricted card. So that was very shocking to me that a city council person would say such a thing or put such a thing in public, talking about another person that's running for office. And then today, this was so disheartening. So this is the People's Pen, and many of you may know what this is, but it's a local publication here in Kootenai County. The people who run this People's Pen, they're local, small business people, just trying to earn a living, having a small publication. On the back of this, it says, suggest a donation per paper, 1 per person, please. So they're basically leaving this paper at different businesses and just asking them to take 1 at a time and leave a small donation if you can. So somebody in Kootenai, and this comment was not the city council person, but the headline post was, when you see a stack of the People's Pen, don't just take 1, take them all. If you see them, grab the whole stack. So then the city council person puts, great idea, take the whole stack. If they leave them littered around, help clean up Kootenai County. That was from a city council person. And then of course it's now, other people are now chiming in saying, great idea, we're gonna do this. This person is Ed DePriest.
Right.
And I voted for Ed, I know, and I'm glad, yes, I'm glad you admit it, it's on here. I voted for Ed, and I'm sorry, but Ed does not represent my thoughts on this at all. We are harming a local business in our community. This isn't about high school name calling. When they're on this page doing the name calling thing, yes, that's just immature. But when you're harming 2 gentlemen like Plass and Hanley who are running for a position, saying that they're going to get off on reading children's porn, and then you're harming someone's local business. I don't know if there's a code of conduct for city council people. What, for instance, if this was one of my employees, they would not continue working for me anymore. I know you're elected officials. So yes, next time I vote, I will have that option who to vote for, and so will everybody else. But I would hope that there is some sort of code of conduct within the city council, because this was just very, very disappointing.
Thank you for your comment. If anyone else would like to speak this evening,
Ma'am, can I get up again?
what is, no ma'am, I'm sorry,
If you want,
but next time you can.
It's in reference, because we talked earlier, and I noticed you changed cannot speak at the expense of to cannot disparage. So that's kind of what I wanted to address, as well as the.
Ms. Lehman, you'll have a chance to do that next time. Thank you. Yes, sir. Hi, Paul. Next speaker is Mr. Paul Malo.
Hello, my name is Paul Malo. I am a resident of the Hayden area. It's a little sliver between Hayden Lake and Hayden. And as Amy pointed out, the county voted to replace 2 incumbents last Tuesday on the library board. In spite of being outspent and the Coeur d'Alene press endorsing the incumbents. Every community should act in response to the messaging of those votes. They need to protect the children in those areas. These libraries will take time to remove the questionable material. It's important that the elements of the libraries not operate under the state exemption for the criminal pornography code. It's very simple. It's defined in state code. So all they have to do is not use that exemption and comply with the pornography laws like every other citizen of Idaho. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else care to make a comment? Okay, we will move on to the next section of our meeting tonight. We have a public hearing, the Bassett Zone Map Amendment. Ladies and gentlemen, here's how we work our hearings here in the city of Hayden. First, the staff will introduce the subject case. Second, the applicant will present the proposal. Third, the staff will present a summary of the staff report. Next, we will have our public comment. It will be directed to the council. Commenters will be called upon in the order of those in support, uncommitted, and those opposed to the subject case. The applicant will then be allowed an opportunity for a rebuttal, but only may rebut new information brought up by commenters. At that point, the public hearing will be closed and council will begin their deliberations. It is 5:22 and we are opening this public hearing. Donna, go ahead.
Good evening. So tonight we're looking at the Bassett Zone Map Amendment. It's PZE 230045. Just as a matter of location, kind of getting ourselves oriented. This piece of property is on North Reed Road. It's south of West Miles Avenue. It butts up on the west side by Bridle Trails subdivision. The development team, the applicant's engineer of record is Eric Olson. He's here tonight. Jeremy Terzulli will most likely present on behalf of the owners, Paige Bassett. His wife? Right, okay. So as a zone map amendment comes forward, the existing zone is residential suburban. It is got kind of a surrounding of a single family residential, and the request is to move from residential suburban to residential single family. That's kind of a snapshot of the existing zone map. And then the future land use map shows that this is indeed in an area that is destined to become single family residential. So the request is for a residential suburban zone map amendment change to single family residential. And I'm going to let Jeremy present, but I did want to note that this is a zone map amendment. It did not come forward with a subdivision, although the narrative does talk to the fact that a subdivision, should this zone map amendment be approved, would be forthcoming, and that they're proposing 6 lots. So I just wanted to point out that there was no subdivision request concurrent with this zone map amendment. So with that, I did want to point out one more quick thing that came kind of up in after we sent out the staff review. Recently, we did a zone code text amendment, and that went through the zone code text process to add a 5th standard of approval. However, this application was received on March 20th, and that was prior to the ordinance being published to change and add that 5th standard of approval. So Mr. Tuzuli will be talking to the 4 standards of approval, not the 5th one, just so everybody else kind of knew what was going on there. Okay, I think it's yours. You're welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Porcel, Council. For the record, Jeremy Terzulli. I'm a project coordinator with Olson Engineering. Eric Olson is also here tonight, observing and able to answer any engineering-specific questions. As a reminder, I am not a licensed engineer, but some people do confuse me for that from time to time. So here we go. Okay, Paige Bassett came to Eric and I several months ago with this request, had purchased this property last year. Paige started Bassett Construction back in 1993, resides in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, specializes in custom homes, remodels, and additions. Not exactly a developer. In fact, Paige said that if approved, this will likely be his one and only subdivision, and I'll get into that a little bit later. I know we're not here to talk about the subdivision, but the reason I bring up this exhibit, there's actually 2 reasons, showing that the R1 zoning designation has that minimum lot size of 8250. So With regard to density, and putting in a road and an approved fire truck turnaround, that the square footage of the large parcel is such that 6 lots is all that would physically fit on this parcel. And again, if approved, that's what we'll be looking for, is a 6-lot subdivision. That's another matter and another approval, but I did want to point out that the density could never exceed 6 on this parcel with the R1 zoning designation. Another reason I brought this up is because we show that fire truck turnaround proceeding to the north. I'll touch on that again a little bit later. We're thinking about flipping that to the south, and there's this very specific reason for that. So I'll try to weave this all together, because some new information came to me over the last few business days, and I haven't had a chance to update the graphic. So this zoom out view, and Donna's also showed this, I put this overlay on here to give a visual example of scale of what we would be proposing and how the vast majority of the neighborhood lays out in a more classic R1 style neighborhood, that the lot sizes that could be approved in this zoning designation would be very similar to the vast majority of the residences in the neighborhood. So I brought this one up for scale. Not talking about the subdivision right now, that's a different process, but for the purpose of scale and what these lot sizes would look like adjacent to the lots that are already platted in this area. So the standards of approval, we're all very familiar with those. It's ironic, I do believe that the 5th standard of approval that got added a week after our application actually does, this application comports with that as well. So, but speaking of the 4 standards of approval that this one is going to be beholden to, the first standard of approval and the second sort of offers guidance to the commission and to the council with regard to any additional studies that might need to be done, any traffic studies or environmental studies. City staff did not feel that any of those were prudent on this request. So 1 and 2 are pretty simple to move through. Number 3 speaks to the project's consistency with the comprehensive plan, the future land use map, and those goals and policies in the comprehensive plan. I'm going to get into those in another slide or two. And then number 4 speaks to the zone map and the zone text and whether or not it is in alignment with the district or the purpose and intent of that district. And so this next slide, and I brought this up at planning and zoning as well, and I thought this was very important to this proposal, that this is straight out of Hayden City Code. Title 11 is the title specifically regarding zoning in the city of Hayden, and this is the very first paragraph which sort of gives direction as to why there is a zoning code, how it's to be implemented, and I felt that it was very I thought that it lent merit to what was going on here, which is that the zoning regulation shall implement the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan and have been made with reasonable consideration among other factors for the character of the district and its peculiar suitability for particular uses, and with the view of conserving the value of buildings and encouraging the most appropriate use of the land throughout the incorporated area of the city of Hayden. So this is in essence sort of the vision statement for zoning code in the city of Hayden. And it sort of cross-references the comprehensive plans, the future land use map. Those documents are all kind of working together and cross-referencing each other. And I thought that it was important to point out that the question before us tonight is, what is the most appropriate use of this particular piece of property given the current conditions in the city of Hayden? I feel like that's what this mission statement sort of speaks to. So I just felt that that was important to point that out. So again, I pointed out that city staff indicated that no additional studies were necessary during our pre-development meeting. The 6-lot subdivision could comply with all of the R1 development standards. There would be no variance requests in there. Utilities are all around the area. Future extension of Hayden Lake Irrigation District water line. We've spoken with Brandon over at HLID. He'd like to take an AC line that he has in the backyards over there and at least get it out into Reed Road. We've coordinated with him. If approved and if we move to construction, that will coincide with development. The request and the subsequent subdivision would align with the district's purpose and intent. It's very consistent with the neighborhood context. It's consistent with the future land use map, and it aligns with many of the goals and policies found in the comprehensive plan. And per my analysis, very specifically, goals 3, 4, 5, 8, 12, 14, 15, and 17. Policies 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 13, 14, and 18, and I believe that the staff report sort of mirrors my analysis as well. So this is a street view of the conditions 2021. I think this graphic was taken. Not much has changed since then. You can see that the house is in great disrepair. It's in essence a tear down. It's seen its useful life. The other reason I had this street view shown is because the removal of some of those overgrown trees and shrubs that are right up and in the right-of-way at this point in time. Even if they were trimmed back to outside the right-of-way actually is about at that fence line right now. Removal of those trees and trimming back could certainly improve sight distances, creating a safer section of Reed Road in this area. Because again, if approved and if a subdivision were to come forward, we would need to dedicate right-of-way, put in the street side swale, infiltration for stormwater, and a sidewalk. So the road will be widened in this section: curb, sidewalk, street side swale. So as I mentioned, Paige has no interest in becoming a developer. He came to us because he has 2 daughters that work here locally, put themselves through school. One's a registered nurse, one is a x-ray tech, I believe, down at Kootenai Medical. They're really struggling to enter the housing market. They're right on that fringe of being able to possibly qualify with the rising cost of housing around here. In essence, they would probably be house poor if they did find a house that was suitable. So Paige came up with this idea that if I bought, an acre or 2 of land, infill development, and replatted it, I could likely build 2 homes at cost for my daughters. If I could build 3 or 4 for profit, I could probably make that work. They could enter home ownership and continue their careers down at Kootenai Medical or elsewhere in the medical field. And Paige is here tonight. He and his wife, Kelly, they're probably going to speak a little bit more to that. So I'm just going to let that be. So we met, Paige and I, a few months ago. We went and met with the immediate neighbors because, as Donna's slide pointed out, there are 4 parcels here kind of in a sea of R1 that are still residential suburban. Our first question was, what's your feeling on the project? The 2 neighbors to the south were more or less neutral. The neighbor directly to the south, the Paces, they're also here tonight because their situation has recently changed. If I go back to this slide here, that hammerhead pointed to the north. In case somebody up to the north that's on that flag lot there, maybe we could work with them to extend that roadway and give them access. They didn't seem receptive to that. The Paces, when we met with them, said, at this time, we're not in opposition of what you're trying to do, but probably not interested in collaborating on this. Their situation has since changed. We're hoping to be able to work with them if we can get an approval tonight to flip that hammerhead, perhaps extend it and give them access to the back of their lot. I'll let them speak to their position on that, but that sort of came about just within the last few days. The neighbor a little bit further south, he was pretty indifferent, said, yeah, you do what you're gonna do, just don't jam a bunch of apartments in there and we're cool with whatever. So that was sort of his position. Another thing I wanted to point out is that roughly 45 notices were sent out with this. Last I checked on the staff report, I believe there was 3 write-in comments at this point in time. I don't know who's here to speak in opposition to it tonight, but I think that speaks to the fact that the other 40 or so people that did not comment were at worst neutral on this project and felt no need to comment on it. So just wanted to make sure that that was pointed out. And that planning and zoning, they voted unanimously to recommend approval for this project. And at this time, I think that's all I have. Are there any questions?
Council members, questions? Councilmember White.
Yeah, just one question. So they realized that the zoning at the time they bought the property was suburban.
I believe during Page's due diligence, he held a meeting, a pre-development meeting with the city, and that was discussed. I can't say for sure, but I do believe that would have been pointed out. But again, Page is not a developer. He's a custom home builder, and he fully understood the process until he came to Eric and I.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions of Mr. Terzulli? Thank you very much. We'll now move into the public comment phase of this hearing.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
After, well, you let me finish. What I was going to say was after the staff presents a summary of the proposal.
All right, so summary of the staff review. You have the staff review. The staff reviews have been posted on the website, the city's website, since the noticing for planning and zoning. So we try to make those out and available for the public as part of the very first notice that goes out. So sometimes we're a couple of days behind, but generally speaking, they're on the website. So in relationship to the first 2 items, the whether or not we want to recommend approval or conditional approval, and whether or not we need to have additional studies. This is a 6 lot, potentially it's a small 1.5 acre piece of property. And the future land use map and all the long range plans identified it as being single family residential, and that's what they're proposing for it to go to. So based on that information and the fact that if you did do residential, single family, they're not proposing it to be any higher density. It wouldn't trip any of the traffic impact analysis. None of the additional studies would be tripped by the proposed density that they were proposing. So that's why no additional studies were proposed. And then again, because of the proposal that was to move to what was already in the future land use map and in the comprehensive plan, as well as the long range plans, neither staff nor the Planning and Zoning Commission felt that additional conditions needed to be added. So then the third standard talks about amendments to the zoning map shall be in accordance with the future land use plan map and the goals and policies found in the Hayden Comprehensive Plan. So single-family residential from the comprehensive plan says that it's a land use type that represents a classic Hayden neighborhood where single-family homes dominate and densities are low, typically ranging from 3 to 4 units per acre. Accessory dwelling units are permitted by permitted, but that's supposed to be a but. Let's see. Accessory dwelling units are permitted, and that's supposed to be a but, not a by. But two-family dwellings and other types of missing middle housing are not. It's interesting. You're typing away, and you hear it in your head, and until you read it out loud. Anyway, so goals and policies of the comprehensive plan are found on page 3 of the staff review, and the complete goals and policies are always found in the appendix of your staff reviews in their entirety. The ones that were identified in the staff review, and this is why I always append the goals and policies in the appendix, is because what staff may think is a goal or a policy that is relevant to this particular proposed change. The applicant may have others, and he did, and council may have others that they think are also appropriate that staff did not identify. So the ones that we kind of pointed out was that you wanted to maintain an attractive and balanced mix of land uses, density, and housing types, ensuring the future character of the community, promoting greater choices and opportunities. The city should encourage the development of land within the corporate limits of Hayden prior to any annexation areas, preserve, protect, and strengthen the vitality and stability of existing neighborhoods, ensure that all development can be serviced by existing public facilities or extended to adequately serve the development. And as was noted by Mr. Tuzuli, there are utilities in Reed Road, and at time of development, those overhead lines that you saw in his picture will actually be required to go underground. Establish a balance between jobs and housing. Coordinate the timely development of efficient, effective, and environmentally sound sewer, water, and other utility infrastructure, and ensuring that those costs of the development are shared equitably and accommodate for ongoing growth. Ensure that ordinances and policies don't violate private property rights or adversely impact property values, and promote and encourage the development and rehabilitation of quality housing through a variety of housing options. And then policies could be that the city should judiciously evaluate the opportunity to provide sewer and utilities within the corporate limits and plan future extensions. Development should be compatible with the land use chapter of the comprehensive plan, that's chapter 4, and fiscally responsible in adequate transportation, utilities, and parks. The city should evaluate community-wide impacts from development. Encourage rezoning and zoning text amendments to support the creation of strategic nodes, which this one is not, but encourage that rezoning and zoning in support of transition zones of residential and transition zones from smaller to larger. That's part of that conversation. Coordinate and support local water and irrigation districts in an effort to balance growth with available water supplies and infrastructure. That was an interesting comment because, as Mr. Chuzuli noted, he's talking to Hayden Lake Irrigation District about moving their water from the back of the property to the front of the property. We didn't get comments back from Hayden Lake Irrigation District. We got comments back from Avondale Irrigation District that said they'd be happy to support them, to provide service for them, because they're right on the boundary. So it's kind of an interesting comment. The existing zone designation is residential suburban. And residential suburban zone provides for single-family residential on larger lots with minimal agricultural uses. And that proposed zone designation is very similar in verbiage to what shows up in the comprehensive plan. The single-family residential zone provides for a classic Hayden neighborhood where single-family homes on smaller lots are permitted. Accessory dwelling units are permitted, but two-family dwellings are not. So the setback and lot comparison is found in your staff review. Just wanted to point out the differences between residential and suburban and single-family residential as far as setbacks go. So the principal structures have the same front yard setback, the same side yard and flanking street, and the same rear yard setback. So those setbacks don't change at all. And the same height requirement. But the accessory structure in the residential suburban has, the only difference here between the two is that the side yard setback on accessory structures is also 10 feet in residential suburban, but it's 5 feet in residential single family. Both of them have a 20-foot high accessory height on their accessory structure. Maximum lot coverage, because again, residential suburban has a minimum lot size of half an acre, is a 35% lot coverage versus a 45% lot coverage for single-family residential. Residential suburban, again, that half acre minimum equates to about 21,000 square feet versus the 8,250 in a residential single family. The minimum lot frontage is the same, and so is the ADU. Very similar as far as the requirements and the setbacks. So the city sewer master plan shows the site within the H2 sewer basin. The project is in the Northern Lakes Fire Protection District. Streets at the time of development would be, Reed Road would have to be built to the typical section. And the internal streets would have to meet local street standards if it's a public road. And if it's a private road, it would have to meet private street standards. Private streets, and I'm not saying that they're proposing a private street, I'm just suggesting that if they do, that would have to come back for council approval. And you can put up to 15 single-family residential lots on a private street. Stormwater shall be reviewed at the time of site plan or subdivision development. So all of that infrastructure will be reviewed at the time of future development, but it is accounted for in the review of a zone map amendment. So notices were sent to 25 agencies, and the public agencies who were responded were 7 of them. Most of them had no comments, to include Panhandle Health District, Idaho Fish and Game, Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, Idaho Department of Water Resources. Avondale Irrigation District again said that they were in support and they would serve the water in future development. And Northern Lakes Fire Protection District approved the request and provided direction at the time of future development. So public comments received prior to the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing were included in a memo that went out to them on the Friday before the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing, because most of them, we only had one of them that actually came in time of the posting on Board Book, and the rest of them came in after Board Book was published and before the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. So they were sent as a memo directly to the Planning and Zoning Commission, similar to what I do with City Council. Of those that were sent and they were reviewed during the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. Again, it's important to note that there were 45 adjacent property notices that were mailed out. There was one big yellow notice board that was placed on the site. Legal notice was published in the Coeur d'Alene paper, and a public service announcement was sent out to various media outlets and posted on the city's website. Of that, comments that were received, and they were sent in the memo to the Planning and Zoning Commission, there were no comments that were received in favor, 1 was neutral, and 4 were opposed. The folks that presented at the public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission, their testimony is in the minutes that's in the council packets and identified in the written recommendation as well. So at the conclusion of the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the zone map amendment request from residential suburban to single family residential. Prior to this meeting, we do basically a do-over of all of that public noticing. And so we sent out 45 adjacent property notices again. So they received, those 45 folks received 2 notices, put up a new notice board in front of the property, posted again legal notice in the Coeur d'Alene paper, posted a website, and posted to various media outlets. And in the council memo that was part of the information uploaded to Board Book, there were there was 1 neutral and there were 3 opposed. Since the time that notice went out to Board Book, we received 1 additional comment, and that was as a neutral comment, and that was all it was just neutral. So then the standards of the zone map amendment are here, and the city council may approve with conditions, or deny the zone map amendment. Questions from me?
Mr. DePriest.
Thank you. Going back to, and this is just, I guess, from my education, because it caught my ear here, the comment on private street, and you said private street allows up to 15 lots?
Single-family residential lots can access a public.
Yeah, not that
Private
I
street.
think that, but does that override the minimum lot sizes?
Nope.
So it would have to be a long private street that would allow.
No, all I'm saying is that you can always, you can develop subdivisions, minor subdivisions, or subdivisions with a public street or with a private street. And they're proposing 6 lots, but one of the conversations that Mr. Trusolli brought up was that they could flip that access to provide access to the lot to the south. And if they did that, there would still be, if that all moved forward, they
You're
got,
saying,
right, around
Okay.
and through, they could do that.
Okay.
And they would still not, it wouldn't be too many lots.
go over 15,
That's what I'm
right?
saying.
Okay, thank you.
Good clarification, thank you.
Other questions of Donna?
Yeah,
Mr.
Donna,
Roder.
thank you, Mayor. What is the square footage of the lot?
It's 1.48 acres, I believe.
Square footage, please.
Don't have.
Okay, that's, you said 1.4 what?
1.48 acres.
Okay, so my question is that if it remained residential suburban, that only 2 homes or 2 lots could be divided up because the minimum lot size is a half an acre on residential suburban.
Correct.
So 3 homes could not be placed on the lot because it's under 1.5 acres.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Ms. White?
Yes. I just want to, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to bounce off of Councilman Roder's statement about, could a variance be given to make it 3 homes available on the suburban with the 1.48 acres?
Well, it would be it would be a request to planning and zoning, and the planning and zoning commission would have to determine if it met the requirements of a variance.
Okay.
I would say, just knowing what the elements of a variance are, that one of the conditions is that a variance can't be a situation that's created by the applicant. So this wouldn't typically be a situation where a variance would be an appropriate tool to use. It's used when you have a site that's difficult, like bulk and scale is difficult for what they want to do because there's a steep side or there's water or there's something unique about the parcel. So I can't see, based on what we know in this meeting tonight and in this application, that this parcel or this application would be ripe for a variance request.
Okay, because I had also listened to the planning and zoning meeting in preparation for this, and I thought I had heard Mr. Tirzulli say something about 3, something on the residential suburban. Okay. So with the, both the suburban and the single family, there can be accessory dwelling units, correct? Okay. So even on the 8,250 square foot lot, they could have an accessory dwelling unit on single family. Okay. And then with the suburban, with their lots, they could have a accessory dwelling unit.
As long as they met all the other design standards
All the other
and
design
requirements that are required for an accessory dwelling unit.
Okay, and that could be up to 1,000 square feet. Okay. Thank you.
Other question? Mr. Satterfield?
A couple of things, thanks, Mayor. One, I need to disclose that one of the neighbors of this property called me, and her only question was, what's the difference between residential, suburban, and residential? That was the end of the conversation, so. But I did want to disclose I had that.
It doesn't preclude you from being impartial or unbiased
No,
in
not at all.
decision making?
Not at all, just answering a question, and after hearing this, I did answer it right, so I'm feeling good. A question, Donna, maybe this is more for Fonda than you. Number 2 up here says we may impose conditions upon rezoning. And as I look at the comments, one of the comments said that they would object to 2-story homes or RV-sized garages. Is that something we can do now, or is that when they get ready to develop?
Yeah, this is just a rezone application.
Okay, and that's what I thought, but when I was reading number 2, I guess
So
I
if
got a
you
little
think,
confused.
if you
so-
think back to some of your other conditions in the past, they're usually related around density. That's what is appropriate at this time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I had.
Other comments or questions?
Oh, yes, thanks.
Mr. Rowe.
I'm a little slow.
It's okay.
The reading our materials here, it said that the property is surrounded by or has other residential suburban lots. Can you identify those? I think it's,
Can you go to the aerial picture, I think probably that was, oh, go ahead, I see what you're doing, but also, but they also, if you can, after this, flip to the overhead there.
so on this map, can you identify other residential suburban?
Everywhere that you don't see a color, so that this is all hatched, kind of. So this is all residential suburban, residential suburban, residential suburban, residential suburban, and residential suburban. And then single-family residential is everything in yellow. All of this around it.
That's all I had, thank you.
Okay?
Okay, thank you. Other comments or questions from, actually other questions for Donna at this point? All right, thank you, Donna.
So what would you like me to leave up during public comments? The 4 standards of,
That, we may have some questions regarding that map. I might suggest to council that the map on the screen be left up, or would you prefer that our decision standards be up?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, we'll leave the map up.
okay?
Thank you very much. Now, we'll have our public comment directed towards the council. At this point, we have one individual who wishes to make a comment at the podium. If there's anyone else that would like to, would you please fill out a form and bring it to the front? The public hearing comment form, thank you very much. We will call upon commenters in the order of support, uncommitted, and those opposed to the subject case. This commenter is for the proposal, Charla Pace.
My name is Charla Pace. I am a Hayden resident. And before I get into this, I would like to personally thank the City Council. A year and a half ago, I was T-boned at a stop sign on Reed Road. And I emailed, I don't remember who, but several of the council members with my concern over how many people were running the stop signs. And I just appreciated the comments and the quick response that I got for my concerns about that. So I just want to personally thank you for that. I would like to speak in favor. I'm going to read because I'm nervous and I don't want a rabbit trail. So I would like to speak in favor of the zone change for this address. We are next door. We're on the south side. We're right below. We're 10275. about 4 months ago, when Mr. Terzulli and Mr. Bassett approached us, my husband and I discussed it, and we felt like we weren't really in opposition to it. We didn't know that we were really in favor of it, so we just said, we'll just let it be. Whatever happens, we'll be okay with. That was about 4 months ago. And then our daughter has just recently retired from the Air Force after 20 years, 3 tours in Iraq, being based in Germany for 5 years, and all over the States. She's currently in Delaware. She's single, and she has recently, about a month ago, she approached us with the idea of moving back home, which of course Mom and Dad said absolutely. But she approached us with the idea of building on the back of our property a home for herself. Our property is 3/4 of an acre. So it would definitely be to our advantage. We would prefer not an accessory dwelling. It would definitely be to our advantage if you approved this, so that Lindsay could, we could split the property and change the zone so that she could be the owner of her own home, and it would be affordable to her. We're kind of dealing with the same thing for her being able to move home, being, she's single, so of course she doesn't have double income. And it would definitely be to our advantage to have her to be able to live close to us, especially as we get older. And we would be able to stay in our home longer. We wouldn't have to sell it quite so soon, and especially when we can't maintain the property anymore. So that is our desire, is to have our baby move home, be close to us, and yet still be independent, have her own home. So again, we stand in favor of it.
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Pace. And you had no reason to be nervous. You did a great job. We have no other comments at this time. If anyone would care to, I'll give one last chance. Okay. We have an opportunity now for the applicant's rebuttal. Mr. Terzulli, you may only bring up items that are brought up during the public comment session. So I'd...
This is uncharted waters for me. I'll let the record stand.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right. Time is 6:02. We will now close this public hearing. Council deliberations. Would anyone care to start off with comments or questions of Donna?
We already asked her.
Okay, well, there may be some more that come up here. Observations? Members? Ms. White, would you care to start?
I would like to go second.
Okay, second.
I differ.
You're looking at me now. I'm really, I kind of, as I thought about this, I went to an email that I asked Brett to answer a question. How many residential suburban lots, properties do we have in Hayden? Because typically we don't see more residential suburban lots being developed. Usually it's higher density. Usually it's going to R1 or mixed use or whatever. We're not, so where I'm torn is, now, I like lower density properties, and actually in our comprehensive plan, and I'll go to it, so let's go to it. It's in the goals and policies. Here we go. It's on goal number 3 of our comprehensive plan. It says maintain an attractive and balanced mix of land uses. And just thinking about that balanced use, it seems like we're losing residential suburban zoning. And so that doesn't give us a balance if we're losing it. In fact, with the question of how many residential suburban lots we have in Hayden, and I really appreciate Donna because she's one busy lady and it takes time to answer these kinds of questions, and I really appreciate it. She said that We have 284 lots in the residential suburban zone designation shown below. And this was dated April 4th, 2023, so it wasn't that long ago. And it said it should be noted that 3 of the largest lots, 2 of those properties at 12 acres and 17 are manufactured home parks. That's not a lot of residential suburban lots in the whole city. And that's a lower density designation. In fact, that's our lowest density residential property zoning that we have. So I came here tonight with the thought of we need to protect and continue these more open lots. However, as a dad who has 3 daughters and knowing the challenges that are out there for people to find housing, I heard 2 families here that are trying to accommodate their family and make it so that they can afford, because really housing has become so unaffordable that it's hard for teachers and nurses and policemen and firemen, first responders to find places to live. So right now I'm really torn. I'm really torn between the need for housing for families, and also that I want to try to preserve these larger, more open lots. And that's where I'm at right now, Mayor, and that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Ms. White?
Can I go third? No. I'm in the same position as Councilmember Roeder. I'm also torn. I believe that leaving the suburban housing gives us greater variety, because suburban is going away so much. So that's where I sit right now. Okay.
Mr. Satterfield?
You know, the builder is mentioned, or would like to put his daughters in a couple of the homes and stuff. You know, it'd be nice if we could say, okay, we'll okay this if you do that. Well, we can't. So, but I can relate to that, because my son and his wife could not afford a home in the city of Hayden, and a similar type thing allowed them to. And that's probably the number one thing I hear from constituents is, my kids can't afford to live here. And, you know, I look at, geez, they're making 16, 17 bucks an hour at McDonald's now. And my son, you know, he's making great money. His wife is making great money. They still couldn't afford a house here. So, you know, I have a tendency to just take these people at their word. And if they're lying to me, shame on them. But I'd like to see opportunity. We can keep our kids here. So that's my comment.
Mr. DePriest?
Thank you. Donna, can you go back to the overhead map, or view, or whatever that is there? The satellite view. There, thank you. Okay, well, we just had the standards of approval on there. Mr. Terzulli also brought up the fact that the application was a short period of time before we added a 5th, which is context of neighborhood. And I look at what is surrounding, basically, especially to the west of that property. And are you able to go to that one where they had the 6th lot also? It looks like the lots are going to be larger than those to the west, it's to some.
So the lots to the west average between 1/5 of an acre and 1/4 of an acre. And the lots that Mr. Terzulli is proposing are nearly 1/4 of an acre. And the lots to the east, immediately to the east, are about 1/3 of an acre.
Right. And I look at the future land use map, and I see that it is for single family. And I don't see, the density of, that we all, when we talk about density being, duplex, triplex, fourplex, apartments and things like that. And getting to what I think we talked so much about recently, does it fit in with the existing homes around it? And I have to say, yeah. And I will echo what has been said here also. I think people are struggling to find a way for their family members, let alone other people, to find housing, and taking into consideration people's property rights and everything else involved. I think this is a good solution to a growing problem. So I tend to lean towards approval.
Donna, could you please return to that slide that you,
I should put them closer together next time, huh?
thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of council, to approve or deny this application, we need to stay to our decision standards here. All of you have expressed very heartfelt ideas, which I certainly concur with. We do, though, need to take a look at our standards and determine whether or not this application meets the decision standards that we have set for ourselves as a city. Does anyone have any comments regarding the amendment to the zoning map and whether or not you feel, and Mr. Roeder, thank you very much for expressing your thoughts through the comprehensive plan, the goals and policies. Other council members have any comments regarding the goals and policies as related to the comprehensive plan or our design standards? I'm sorry, our decision standards.
I'll go ahead. Okay, as I look at them, I guess go to number 3, amendment to the zoning map and zone text shall be in accordance with the future land use map and the goals and policies found in the Hayden Comprehensive Plan. If I'm not mistaken, if we put the future land use map, I believe it is for single family. Am I correct in that? Okay. Amendment to the zoning map and zone text shall align with the zone district's purpose and intent. And if, again, looking at the future land use and the surrounding, I think the purpose and intent, I think it also fits within that standard, and the other two also. I don't see a need to impose conditions. And number 1, may recommend approval. So I believe that it meets all 4.
Council members White or Satterfield? Any additional comments?
I think that the Councilmember White brought it up. They know what the property was zoned at when they bought it. And, we have no way of knowing. We can assume they did. But did they also look at the future land use map that says the comp plan says it's going to be residential one day? And possibly they purchased it because of that. We'll never know, but, with what Ed has said, it's number 4, it's our future land use map, so.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from council members? Ms. White?
Yes, thank you. I would like to say that, just looking at the goals and the policies, looking at the community-wide impacts, we would be losing some of that suburban, some of that open space. We would be, I was looking at the let me see if I can find it here. The population forecast, and just in the comprehensive plan, and it says that population could double in the next 20 years. And right now on this property, there's one family, I don't know how many people, but even in letting it be suburban, that would double that population. And then moving to single family would multiply that even more. So I just see the population growing, I see traffic, and that's with the public health, safety, and general welfare. I see it getting more congested in that area. Therefore, I'm gonna stick with sticking with suburban for right now. Thank you.
Any further comments? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion regarding this application.
I'll make the motion
Satterfield?
to approve this request, this zone map amendment. In my opinion, it does meet the standards. Do I need to be more specific?
No?
Okay.
No, you do not. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We have further discussion from council members. Hearing none, roll call vote, please. Abby?
Council President Roder?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
No?
Councilmember DePreez?
Yes.
And Councilmember Satterfield?
Yes.
Motion passes. Moving on to item number 4, unfinished business. We have 4A is the City of Hayden Sewer Operations and Maintenance, the O&M fee study agreement with the FCS group. Brett, would you care to give us some background on that?
Yes, so currently the city's operating and has been following a 5-year rate study. It also, they looked out 20 years based on cost, needs, expenditures, et cetera. So FCS did that for us back in 2019. And then the city has been using the table from that request since then. We are now 4 years into that. And it is time for us to look and see if we're on track with what has come in and with what the expenditures are. And so there are 2 agreements that are coming before you tonight. The first one is for the city's operations and maintenance to review what.
Mr. Boyer, Ms. Lehman? Ms. Lehman, would you do us a favor? I know there's a discussion going on in the hallway. Could you please close that door? Sure. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
And so the first one is a request to move forward with this rate study after the 4 years to kind of look and see where we're at. This one's about $25,000. It would come out of our sewer O&M fund. They had contacted us last year to have us look at and see if we were on track with all the different costs. In fact, this upcoming year, if you recall, we also had the NIPCA lawsuit money. We had $1 million that we were collecting to reimburse that fund. That, after this next budget year, then comes off as well. And so they will evaluate all the factors associated with our operations and maintenance. And so this is, in time, this is just for the city. The next one, just to give you context, is if there is a dissolution of Harbs and the city takes it over, what would the rates be? And you have to take into account a lot of other information, and that's why there's additional costs. So either way, the city does need to look at its operations and maintenance, the rates, and make sure they're adequate and correct going into the future. There are some similar or parallel pieces to this contract and the next one. If you approve the transfer rate study, some of the information will they will have, but it's not all. I can't tell you how much, but they've computed that in there. So anyways, the first one is for our own O&M operations and maintenance study to look at our rates, everything that's been going on. We're coming to the end of phase 2. So they'll look at, we're pretty close to some of the final costs for the phase 2 project. We borrowed money on that, so they can assess from our prior loans plus the phase 2, are the rates sufficient or do they need to be modified?
So, Mr. Boyer, in the O&M study that we're suggesting we do now, we understand that Hayden Sewer is a break-even proposition. And FCS, the FCS group will tell us how close we are to making this a break-even and make predictions in the future about what our rate should be.
I'm not sure I'd characterize it as break-even, because part of what they'll look at is we have to look also to the future to make sure that we have replacement dollars that we're collecting. And those costs change. So replacement means, so we have currently, when folks receive their monthly bill for operations and maintenance, a portion of that, a large portion goes to HARPS for treatment. The city has its own collection system, and we have costs associated with that continue to go up with fuel and other things. And so they will evaluate all of that. In addition to just operating and maintaining, the city should be putting away money. For example, if we have a line that in 10, 15, 20 years breaks, that we have some money in that fund that we can replace that line. That's where that money would come from. And so they look at, they look at depreciation and try to determine how much should be in that replacement fund. And so I wouldn't describe it as break even, but the fees look at over 20 years, are we charging enough to maintain the system so that we're not losing money? Because it is what's called an enterprise fund, and it needs to stand on its own. We don't dip into our general fund or our tax dollar, property tax and other dollars to pay for it. It needs to stand on its own. And so that's why we have this analysis made.
Thank you.
And it's very standard to do rate studies every 5 years.
Yeah. Mr. DePriest.
Didn't we, or isn't this very much alike with the impact fee studies that we recently did? Kind of the same-ish idea in a way?
Yeah, they have to compute those a little differently, but it's similar. And so just for people's understanding, so O&M is the operations and maintenance. That's the monthly fees to maintain it. The capitalization fee you're talking about is when we have somebody purchases a new house, they are buying into the system. And so you compute that differently. But we will, after phase 2 of the HARBS plant, we will need to do a study on the capitalization fee. Now that we have all that new infrastructure, all of that needs to be computed, but we were waiting to do that study until the phase 2 is completed.
Other questions from members of council? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion regarding the O&M fee study.
I'll make that motion. My motion is to approve the FCS contract for O&M rate study update.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please. Abby?
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Satterfield?
Yes.
Councilmember DePriest?
Yes.
And Council President Roder?
Yes.
Motion passes. Item 4B, the Hayden Area Regional Sewer Board, HARBS, transfer sewer operations and maintenance rate study agreement with the FCS group. Brett?
So this is the second part of, I explained that a little bit. So FCS Consulting Group, they are a company that does rate analysis, and maybe I could have started with that. We've used it before for cap fees for our O&M. They are used by many cities in the area. They have an office in Spokane, and they're great at doing these types of studies. When we met with HARBS, and it's been about a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago, to talk about dissolution of harbs and then having the city take over the treatment plant. There were two studies that were to be done. One of the studies is this transfer rate study, meaning all the parties want to see if we combine and we look at what the borrowing responsibilities, how that all is absorbed, what does the rate look like? And so that's what we agreed when we were in that meeting, that the city would pay for that transfer rate study. It would come out of our sewer fund. The amount of the contract that came in is $42,000. So this one is a more expansive study, thus it's more expensive, because they're going to be looking at what the other entities, so the county, the district, what they're owed, looking at their systems, their rates, and then if we combine, what does that rate look like? And then giving some opinions in relation to combining and having that everything transferred to the city. So this is a little more complicated, and we did agree to do this. We're trying to finalize the group, the subcommittee. I'm hoping it'll be June 9th that we'll meet together to have all the groups get together. But I was hoping that we could let them know that the city has engaged FCS to look at this and move forward. So I don't know if you have any questions. We're going to be entering a little bit of new territory. This is something that doesn't happen very often. It has happened in a couple places in the state where you may combine a facility and look at this. And so there's going to be probably a lot more questions in relation to this study and what happened. So,
Okay. Any questions of Brett from council? Mr. Ruler.
And I want to make sure I get this right in my brain. My understanding is that there's got to be a third study. And my question is, which comes first, the second study or the third study? The third study was that there had to be an asset evaluation of the plant and all the equipment, which FCS said we can't do. It has to be done by engineers. So my question is, how can they do a rate study before they know the value of the assets to calculate in the rate study? So I don't know if I think I have this right, but are we getting the cart before the horse, or do we need to have that engineer on board? And then maybe they're going to work in unison somehow with the second study and the third. Could you maybe address that?
that's a very good question. At the Harbs meeting last week, we discussed that a little bit. Roger was there. It may be that they won't do an asset study because the concept is if all the valuations, all the capital and everything stays with the system and is part of it, why would we look at all the assets and decide that we are going to somehow maybe pay the other entities? I think our position has been all of these assets help run the system. These are not assets that the city would take and put in its general fund, and so they benefit the whole system. And so the need for the asset study came into question based on maybe we look at its entitlement to flow, entitlement to perhaps future flow as opposed to asset. And so I think we're okay to start the rate study because they're apart. It could be that they come back together, and that's why the group needs to meet and go through this. If it's a question I can bring up with Angie Sanchez, but I can tell you from the discussion at the last meeting, the group was, I think, leaning towards not doing the asset study. And it gets a little bit more complicated. We may have to talk offline a little bit on that, but we were looking at more of an agreement similar to what Post Falls and Rathdrum have, in that you're not there's less discussion about the valuation of assets and purchase of assets, and there's more about what are we entitled to as far as flow and future flow. Because that's really what should be important, at least from our perspective, because it doesn't make sense for us to take money and purchase assets when then we have to have the system turn around and charge to then pay them for it. So so we're trying to head that direction where we're not paying in assets, and so we may not have to do the asset study, but we do have to do a rate study.
So this is what you're hearing, the complexity of a three-entity, equal vote, disproportional ownership, if you will, situation. And that's why to dissolve it and make it simple, because you're hearing how complex it is. And I just wanted to say that, because I'll tell you what, going to these meetings makes my head spin because of how complex it is. So for now, do you think that it's prudent to go forth with the second study based on what the Harbs board is leaning towards with the not having the asset study? I guess I'm looking for advice.
I think, with that question, and I thought of that after our last meeting as well, that I'll talk with Angie and make sure that as we move forward, we actually, even if we approve this, we're looking at December till this, that is done, that we can go at the rate, pace that we want to. And so if we talk with them and it looks like they really want to have the asset information, we can put this part on hold. But I think to keep moving forward with the subcommittee, the group that's moving forward, we're going to need some of this. We're going to need their help in answering some of the questions, because the district and the county are going to be concerned with if we do combine on a monthly basis, what are we going to be paying? And I think we can start some of that discussion, but I will ask, and we can come back and give you a report that, hey, in talking with them, they do want to wait for the asset information. I know that they're going through a process now where they're opening up and doing an ask for all engineering. We did not long ago, but ask to get engineers on board so that they can just pick from their engineers. They haven't done that for a long time. So it's to do an approved list, and they want to pull off of that approved list. And unless the amount to do the asset study is less than 50,000, they're going to have to take it out. And so it could be 2 to 3 months before they could get another engineering group or consultant on to do that. And so we didn't want to wait for them to get the asset group on board.
So can I put a summary to what I think?
I know this is complicated.
You gave all the detail.
Yeah.
We have to give an answer to the other entities of what they're going to be charged, because they're worried about that. One of the big worries is they lose control. We have to answer this question of what they will be charged, and that's why we got to get this done. That's my summary. Is that okay?
Yeah, and I think we would ask, at least I would ask, Alan's involved in this, that if we could get started, our common sense or thoughts, that if we get to a point we got to have this, we'll stop this process.
As you said, Matt, it's very complex, right? It's really hard to know at some points what all is truly needed and what isn't. And so you do have to start somewhere. And starting somewhere may lead us to what it is that we are missing without just guessing on what we are missing. And at that point, we can take and step back and say, this is going to be necessary, but we don't need everything. We just need this. And that will allow that to be streamlined more towards what we're trying to accomplish.
And I just heard the district, they're concerned about what they're going to be charged, and we have to give them some kind of idea to move forward. That's why this is, my mind, critical.
So if the council should tonight decide to approve this, could we have your commitment, Brett, to check with the FCS people to make sure it's an appropriate time for it?
Yeah, I'll ask Angie and
Good.
if she needs anything else. I was just going to mention, for the public, part of the reasons why we're looking to do this is for efficiency and saving costs. Whenever we make a decision on that plant, it takes 3 entities to go back out to their entities, discuss all of this, and then bring it back to this entity and make a decision. And it takes months to get through things, additional costs. The other side of things is the city of Hayden now is about 76% of the capacity of this plant. When we started, we were like 24%. And we will just continue to increase. And so it doesn't make sense. Each of the other entities have an equal vote. And at some point, the city's going to have 80% ownership and 1 vote out of 3. And so I don't know that we are going to get there, but there are multiple reasons why it's important for the city of Hayden to move in this direction. So.
Any other questions or comments from council members?
Just comments. Great job, Brett, on trying to explain the last meeting and everything that was said. I'm a little reluctant on this because of a lot of the things that were said. And I think that Hayden Lake, if they're wondering, if we were to pay them for assets, where does it stop? Do we have to pay them back for the engineering on what kind of assets we need? I mean, this whole thing could get out of control. And bottom line is, who's going to pay for it? Well, we're going to have to raise sewer rates to pay for all of this stuff. So I guess I'm not as optimistic as I once was. And I wonder if we should maybe table this until after our June meeting to get a better feeling on if we're going to be able to come to some sort of an agreement. I don't know. I'm just asking the question.
Yeah.
We definitely need to have this at some point. I'm just wondering if we wait until after our June meeting with the subcommittees, if that will tell us for sure. Just a question.
I was going to say, if we have to wait till our June 13th meeting, I don't think it's the end of the world. In that meeting, we may hear from them. I don't know. I don't know where the district's board is on this. You heard answers in that last meeting we were all together. They do have a couple board members that are in support of this, and they're asking the questions, and I can't answer them.
Exactly, and that's why I wonder if we should postpone it. But you also said that we'll just do it by steps.
Yeah.
If we go to that meeting in June and find out we can't make a deal, boom, this stops. That's my biggest concern. Why pay for something that we potentially may not need?
I think the agreement gives us the ability to end the contract with a
15 days.
15-day notice.
Okay.
Termination clause. And you could approve the agreement tonight with the condition that Brett not take any action on it until after
the
the
meeting.
June 13th, just so you don't have to bring it back to another council meeting.
Okay.
Mr. DePriest.
Well, that was kind of where my question was going about what effect, if any, would tabling it have? Would it be any detrimental effect, or I think as Fauna just said, if we put the conditions on it, that allow him, let me back up here, that would not take action, okay, until we get the questions answered. So I think I'm looking for the simpler, but I agree with what Councilmember Satterfield said there, unless it would cause some, detrimental effect to the process.
Part of the reason was to go into that meeting to be able to say, the city's moving forward with this and let them know that we think it's important. I think we can, I like the idea of we won't take any action. I don't think the consultant will be able to mobilize and do anything before, we're looking at June 9th anyways. And so I'm okay with that. And we have 2 council members that'll be in those discussions that we'll be able to hear and kind of judge whether or not they're serious about doing this.
I'll make a motion that we postpone until the next city council meeting to take action.
I second that.
We have a motion to postpone. Do we have a second?
I second that.
We have a motion and a second to postpone. Is there any further discussion? Mr.
I guess I'd like to ask why you prefer postponing instead of, as we just talked about, approving it to allow them to see that we're, looking to move forward, but also with the condition that Brett can't take any action. So I'm kind of just curious as what the differentiation between the two.
I just heard from Brett that it's so close, another meeting.
I gave you a
I'm
minor.
open, but I'm just,
I like the idea of also sending the message that, yeah, we're interested in it and we are willing to move forward, but we have some things, questions to be answered and things to work out to make sure that it is as we are willing to accept it. But again, would it have to come back anyway to us?
If you approve it tonight, it wouldn't, but we would give you kind of reports of this is where we're at, and I wouldn't have the consultant do anything until after the meeting, We haven't set the meeting, I'm hoping June 9th.
I'll remove my motion to say we approve it tonight and that,
Help us out here, council.
Motion to approve with the condition that Brett not take any action on it until the next joint HARBS meeting.
there we go. That's my motion.
That's your motion. Do I have a second?
Which is June, we're trying to get for June 9th. It's our subcommittee meeting, actually, on the
Yeah,
9th.
we've had,
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
it's okay.
Hearing none, roll call vote, please, Abby.
Councilmember White?
No.
Councilmember DePriest?
Yes.
Councilmember Satterfield?
Yes.
And Council President Roder?
Yes.
Motion passes. Having been in some of those meetings, I'm happy that council wants to lay out to Hayden Lake Irrigation District or Sewer District that we are serious about this and we're coming to the table prepared. If they don't want to do it, that's fine. Moving on to new business, item 5, 2023 intergovernmental agreement with the city of Post Falls for prosecution services. Brett, would you like to?
Yeah, this is one that will have to be part of our budget process as well. But Post Falls, who is providing this services, has asked us to move forward with approval of this agreement early. So they have currently, it was kind of an interim, let's see how much time they were taking for our prosecution services. And we were paying $55,000. They, after 1 year, they looked at the number of cases that we had and looked kind of the proportionate share between Post Falls, Rathdrum, and Hayden. Rathdrum also runs their prosecution services through the city of Post Falls, that they've asked for an increase, and you see that in the contract, to go up to $70,000, which is what they're asking Rathdrum to pay for as well. The number of cases that we had in the last year for our municipality was 324 cases. And Rathdrum actually had 152, and we were paying less than they were. And so they were trying to balance that out. Post Falls had 728 cases. And I got a report from them as well, which, by the way, one of the reasons we moved to the Post Falls to have them do prosecution services as opposed to the county, was we could not get any reports or get any information on cases. And the situation has changed where there's great communication between our staff that does code enforcement upstairs, between even the sheriff's office as far as the police officers on cases, what's going on. They've given us fairly recently a little report on the number of cases by type, and I can forward those on to you as well. So the communication is really good, but they are asking for an additional amount. Everything seems to be going pretty well as far as those prosecution services. So they're doing anything that we're prosecuting in relation to our codes, criminal side of things, as well as code, where we might have to have, say somebody's not cutting their weeds and it becomes a health safety issue, and we've given them a notice. It's gone on to a letter, and then we send it off to the court, and then they may have to go in there. Or there could be, on the criminal side of things, there not any felonies, but all misdemeanor type cases, they are handling for us. So this is for a renewal of this contract. The amount would begin in our new budget year, so October 1. But they've already started their budget. They're trying to put their budget together, and they want to know if we're on board. We can terminate the contract really at any time as well if we find a better way to do this. Right now, it's operating smoothly, and so I would, yeah.
No, go ahead and finish it all.
I was just going to say, I'd recommend moving forward. At some point, if this continued, going higher, it may make sense that we contract out with a specific attorney to do this. Back when, if you remember, back when Caitlin left, we actually asked Lake City Law if they wanted to do it. At that time, they didn't want to do that.
We couldn't, we were prohibited because we had a public defender contract for Shoshone County, but Lake City Law no longer has a public defender contract for Shoshone County, so wouldn't be precluded from any of our attorneys handling prosecution services.
So anyways, looking at the number of cases and the per hour, right now they're charging us $169 per case.
Flat rate per case or per hour?
So it's basically taking 324 by the amount that we're charging. It just gives you 169. And so some of those are settled before, and I tried to get the information from them. I'm not sure that they're tracking it that close. I mean, I can find the ones that were settled, but some of these are going to trial. And so you have some that are longer, some that are shorter. But they haven't tracked to that detail. I can tell you how many cases, dollars per case, types of cases that we have. And they've been tracking that. So they provide the administrative support staff for that, as well as the attorney work. So,
Mr. Bruce.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the county superior court deals with felonies, right? Representing the state, and it's usually
The
the state
county handles all felonies.
Yeah, superior court or whatever.
District court.
District court, yeah.
Other questions for
Brett,
Mr. Satterfield?
it says we're adding an annual meeting. Who's the annual meeting between?
We usually bring upstairs staff.
Okay.
Abby's would be invited because she's helping to coordinate. And if I have to the last one, just to kind of hear things, and we ask questions. And so, but the mayor is welcome to have, I mean, really, if you have questions, we can take those to this annual meeting. But
The other question I have, I see that they're paying for supplies, supervision, all that stuff. Would there ever be a reason somebody could file a public records request to them that would go beyond what our contract is? Because those can get, and I can't think of an example, but I thought maybe you guys might.
think of an example. I don't
Okay.
think
I'll leave it alone then.
there's probably an issue. But
All right, thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, you said that Post Falls, they're not handling prosecution of felonies. Is that true? Then who is?
Kootenai County
Are we
prosecutors.
paying them?
No. Well, it goes
have-
through, we don't pay a specific like contract amount for that. All of those, so the felony prosecutors handle it for all of the municipalities, and it's paid through your justice system tax
Oh,
dollars.
the
Yeah.
property of the
Yes.
taxpayers.
So you know the line item, yeah,
Got it. Okay, all
yeah.
right. Because I know we used to pay Kootenai County. And that
For
was
your
only
municipal, for your
But not for the-
misdemeanors.
Yeah, not for the
Misdemeanors, got it.
felonies.
Okay, that was the only question I had. Thanks.
Other questions or comments?
Yeah. it's a-
Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve or deny the intergovernmental agreement with Post Falls. Mr. DePriest.
Yes, I will motion to approve the 2023 intergovernmental agreement with City of Post Falls for prosecution services.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further comments or questions? Hearing none, roll call vote, please, Abby.
Council President Roder?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Satterfield?
Yes.
And Councilmember DePriest?
Yes.
Motion passes. Rolling into our section of the agenda for reports from Brett and the calendar review.
And yeah, I'll be quick here. Really just to start off again, a thank you to Recreation and Public Works and all. We've had multiple volunteers helped with the Arbor Day, the Kite Day, but Arbor Day was probably the funnest, the best one that I've been to, just partly because of the weather was warm. We've had some really cold, rainy Arbor Day celebrations, but it went well, and Mayor was there and did the award ceremony, and it was fun to see the kids. We had, I don't know, approximately 500 elementary school kids come, and they would walk around to little booths and learn information about trees and nature and things like that. So that went well. Kite Day went well, so kudos to our Recreation and Public Works folks that helped with that. Coming up this next Monday is Memorial Day. Again, that's a important celebration that the city of Hayden does, I think, very well. And Memorial Day is the one where we have two parts to it. 9:30 is down at the beach, and they do the bell ringing ceremony. And then 11 o'clock here is the ceremony where we have speakers, music, and things recognizing our veterans on Memorial Day. And so we invite all of the public to attend and be there. We also go out front to our Memorial Plaza and we look at that. There's a couple new things, and Public Works has spent some time, and others planting. We had a Girl Scout group, troop came and helped plant some flowers and things to make it look nice out there. So anyways, that's Memorial Day. Week for Monday would invite all mayor, council, and the public to be there. Next week is next month, June 20th, 22nd is the Association of Idaho Cities Conference. Again, just a reminder, if you want to attend that and haven't made arrangements, to maybe let Abby know and she can help you with that. Our first budget workshop will be June 13th. We'll tack it on to our regular meeting as a workshop prior to. We are working diligently on that budget. This week we'll have meetings with our department heads with the budgets that they have submitted, and then we'll be coming to council. So
Will that be 3 o'clock?
yeah. Susan asked about the budget. She's not here, but maybe something can convey to her. We do start, and we have public meetings associated with our budget.
The date on that budget meeting again, I'm sorry.
June 13th.
Thank you very much.
And when's the next one after that?
It's the following council meeting,
27th?
June 27th. We did post, just so you're aware, it is an appointed position, and we mentioned that we would be posting Sandy Rudy's position. She continues to make progress, but that position has been posted, and we've received a few applications, and we may be moving forward with some preliminary interviews next week. So just be aware, we do need that help. And that is a position that will come before the council. We'll let you know more on that. Lastly, I wanted to give an update on the survey. It closes Friday. We're at, as of yesterday, we're at 1,071 responses. And he is preparing to do the report at our next council meeting on June 13th as well. So he's gathering, putting that together. I think you'll find it interesting. I think a lot of it is maybe somewhat what we thought, and some things might surprise you.
You've seen some of the preliminary.
Yeah. So, but I asked him if he would be prepared to finalize that and give the report on June 13th, and he said he could do that. So that's all I have for this evening.
Okay. Roundtable discussion. Does anyone have anything they'd like to mention at the roundtable? Mr. Roeder.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two items. I just thought it's of interest to keep the city council abreast of the treatment plant, the Hayden Area Regional Sewer Board. This is the report, the board report of May 18, 2023, that there are 1,096 residential connections available. I just thought it'd be important for people to hear that that's what our report says. The second thing is I'm curious about where we're at with the number of deputies that we have contracted for the city of Hayden. And I know that there's a contract, and I know that we've increased payment for so many deputies. How many deputies do we have now?
So, first, one of the things I'd like to do, the mayor and I are meeting with Bob tomorrow to have some of these discussions and to talk about next year's as well and start those conversations. In the last report that I got, they are still having extreme difficulty in getting and keeping deputies. And so we may have to figure out if they can't assign. So it's going to come down to maybe they haven't been able to hire the additional officers. It might be in assignments made as far as we're, patrolling. We're going to have to work through some of that, but they have not been able to hire the officers in the last while, but we'll get an update. And I would like to have either Bob or one of the other folks with him come make a report to the council at our next meeting as well.
So my main question is there a connection to the amount of dollars we're paying the sheriff's office and how many deputies we're getting? Are we paying them more than we're getting, or is that in sync?
Well, so in answer, we did raise it up to the 702. If you recall in that agreement, until the next budget year, where we specifically said we'd tie into like the 5 new officers, we talked about the 3 new officers. We also gave them some latitude, not knowing whether or not they were going to be able to dedicate. I think the answer that I've heard from them is they are patrolling and covering our shifts, but the dedicated officers are still at the lower amount. So we will find out tomorrow when we meet, because that is a question that we have. I spoke with them.
We have too.
Yeah. Okay, but we're thinking.
Yeah, we have the same question, and we want to get a report from them.
Right along with this, and I don't know, Fonda, you might be able to contractually, let's say they can't provide by the time, is there a clause or whatever in the contract that we can pro rata not pay them for what they're not providing as was agreed upon?
That's gonna will partly be their conversation tomorrow, the what if, because we haven't finalized that contract for starting in October. So we have the current one right now with this flexibility of give us coverage, even if you can't give us dedicated bodies for the higher amount that we're paying to get us through this year. And then we'll have a new contract for October that's
That will
not
be part of the
complete yet.
discussion.
Yeah, we have an interim contract right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And in October 1, ideally, we have a contract that says, we have the 5 additional officers, this is what they're doing, this is what they're here, and it outlines all of that. That's what I want. And if they come back and say, we're not able to hire them because we can't get people in the door, then we're gonna have to decide what to do.
We'll have a discussion.
We'll discuss
So,
it.
we'll get back
Because
to
the reality is to have those 5 new people on the street by October 1, they should be in training now.
Right.
So that's all
that's-
part of the discussion.
So, and I will ask them actually to have somebody come and give a report so the public can hear where they're at as well. And we'll let you know.
It'll be an interesting
Yeah, sounds like it.
Excuse me, I have a question, yeah.
Ms. White.
So you're saying 5 new deputies? I thought it was 6 in the,
Well, we also have school resource officer. I always, I go back
Okay.
and forth on that, but yeah, you're right.
okay, thank you.
So yes, it's a good question. We have the same question. A couple weeks ago, we asked them for this meeting and,
They all run
I've
together.
asked Bob for a while to meet and go through this, so, we'll give you a report because it's important. And I think from how the public responded, we have an obligation to, particularly as we go into the October 1 with the new monies, we've got to account for what we're doing or come up with a plan to do otherwise, so.
You mentioned account. Excuse me, Mayor. Go ahead. My understanding, the county has software that they can track all the officers wherever they are in real time. Can we include that in the contract, that we have that ability to see if our officers that we're paying for are in the city or not?
That'll be part of the
I'm just saying for
discussions.
accountability.
That's a new capability.
They could send you reports.
No, I'm talking about not a report. I'm saying real time on the screen. They know where the officers are.
I don't think you're going to want to buy the electronic infrastructure to be able to see that.
I don't think they could do that right now.
I'm told they have it.
We will have,
They could get it.
They're
could you
just
let's-
working on it at the 911 center right now.
okay, we're going to stop this discussion.
Okay.
We'll give you an update after tomorrow.
All right.
Yes, sir, Mr. DePriest.
Yeah, I'm gonna comment here on what was brought up earlier, and my name was invoked. So I want to make it very clear, the record here, that social media is completely separate from my representation of the city as a council member. When I sit on this dais, when I'm at a workshop, when I'm at a city event or something like that, yeah, I'm representing the city. But I have a constitutional right to free speech and expression, and that is what I do on social media, okay? I have repeatedly said on social media that I represent the city when I sit on the dais, and my personal opinions do not represent the city. Again, I have the right to express myself. Trying to connect me as representing the city at all in comments is an attempt to prevent me from my First Amendment right. If people don't like my personal beliefs and opinions and expressions, then it is their right to not vote for me, but they do not have the right to prevent me from exercising my constitutional right of speech and expression.
Thank you. Other roundtable issues, items? Mr. Satterfield.
Brad helped me out on this. We have an open house in August for the sewer treatment plant.
Oh, out at the plant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would encourage, sewer, but it's, even if you don't know a lot of mechanical stuff, it's impressive. It's very impressive on the process it goes through before it gets dumped into the river or land applied. and free brownies for everyone. And I would like to recognize our finance department. They've had a tough road here because they've been shorthanded and they've stepped up to the plate. Kudos to Brett, kudos to Abby. They've all been involved. And Sean, sorry, they've all been involved. And, you know, great job, you guys. I haven't seen a hump in the road at all. And the other one I'd like to recognize is Amber. She's the first young lady you see when you walk through the door. She always has a smile on her face. She's relatively new, but the stuff she does for council, she provides all of our booklets, my sewer board meetings, just kudos to them. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mike?
Well, yes, I just like to say I'm looking forward to Memorial Day. I like to go to both events, the beach and the one here at McIntyre Park. And I'm looking forward to honoring our service members. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would like to add, because I was deeply involved for a little while there in Arbor Day, that it went incredibly well. I'd like to thank all the city staff, the city streets and the Parks Department. Public Works did a great job on that. In fact, every city department did, and particularly to Susie, you did a great job organizing that with your staff. Thank you.
That's a big part of that. Huge part.
Go ahead. If I may, while we're on there, just driving in, I noticed our streets sure look nice with the striping. It's getting there. From my house to here, it looked like it was all done, but it looks very, very nice and well done, so I appreciate that.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We stand adjourned. Thank you all for sitting through this whole thing tonight, huh?
Go get your notes.